Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to allow a few minutes as we allow the attendees to join us. And so as folks come in, we're going to be letting them into the room, and we'll get started in just a moment. Again, if you're just joining us, we're just allowing a few minutes for people to join the room as we move people and get attendees and registrants moved into the presentation. So we'll just give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started, and appreciate everyone's time tonight. All right, looks like we are building a critical mass, and I know more people will be joining, and appreciate everyone spending some time with us on a Tuesday night. And I know you have many other options to spend your time, and we appreciate you joining us. This is the kickoff for our meeting series number 2. We held our first meeting in person last night at City Hall, which is appreciate those who were able to attend in person, and for you spending time with us tonight. Our series 1, we'll get into a little bit, but we spent some time in September through October listening to different ideas about the project of renovating Market Square and City Hall. And tonight, we're going to start to apply some of these concepts and go through a process of polling and figuring out some of the likes and dislikes together. So we'll get into a little bit of the why we're here. In case you weren't able to make one of our meeting 1 series, we want to sort of establish the why. Why are we having the project? Why are we renovating City Hall? And why are we renovating Market Square? So the 2 pictures on your left, we've got a lot of old infrastructure in our City Hall. It's a beautiful historic structure, but a lot of the guts and a lot of mechanical electrical systems are really, really old. When we replace just a small section of pipe that might just need like a foot, we have to replace like 50 feet of pipe just because of how much corrosion is happening between piping systems, electrical systems. The picture in the middle is a beautiful 1940s boiler that is still operating in City Hall. And we still have challenges with technicians that come out to service. Some have never seen one like this. And to the right, the picture on the right is a picture of our Market Square garage. So if you don't know, Market Square itself has an underground garage underneath it that supports it. And so Market Square is sort of the roof of the garage structure, and it is experiencing significant degradation. It is now 60 plus years old. And so we do experience quite often concrete that's falling. We have to remove and patch. We have exposed rebar throughout the facility and a lot of water infiltration. And so we know that the membrane itself underneath the market that helps to protect the garage is leaking. We have water infiltration that continues to exacerbate the issues of degradation in the garage. So we've got a lot of challenges, as you can imagine, dealing with a very vibrant market, having to go through and renovate the under supporting garage, as well as obviously the beautiful historic structure that is Old City Hall. It's got that 1960s infill and lots of different challenges that go with it. So we're excited about this project. It's been a long time coming, and appreciate you lending a voice to that. So in the next couple slides, some of the timeline and history is sort of fascinating, from the original building from 1817, from the original City Hall through where we are today. And the history kind of from the 1871 when City Hall burned down, every 60 years has gone through a reimagination and reinvigoration of what the needs of the city are at the time. And it's been a police station, multiple fire stations, courthouse, Masonic Lodge, City Hall, the restored government of Virginia met there also during the Civil War. So lots of history in this building, which is lovely. Almost every room of the original structure has neat little elements of history that we've been researching and pouring through. And in the 60s, a sort of urban renewal. You can see the picture in the middle. That's a picture angled through Tavern Square at King Street to City Hall. But much like Tavern Square, many buildings were demolished in order to build new buildings. And the same is true for Market Square. So there were many buildings that were actually on Market Square, and during urban renewal, those buildings were demolished to make for what you know now today as the modern Market Square that you see in the picture on the right. And so right on cue from the 60s, moving forward, we're right in that 60-year mark for us to have much needed renovation of City Hall, modernizing office space. If you've been in City Hall, you know it's kind of a struggle on the first floor to figure out where you need to go. The civic space isn't as engaging. And those are things that I've challenged our design team who are on with us tonight about how do we improve that civic experience, as well as dealing with our other goals within the city, such as net zero and sustainability, all the other things that we want to do with this project. And as you can imagine, in a historic structure, in an urban setting, those are all challenges that we've tasked the design team. We don't have all the answers yet, but we're working through that. We're going through discovery, looking through early engineering to help us guide us through how we can achieve some of the wider city goals, all while maintaining a vibrant city market. We know the farmers market is a cherished thing that's been around for hundreds of years. We want to continue that. And so tonight, we've been gathering your ideas for the last few months, and we're going to go through some concepts, but we'll get into that in just a few moments. So meet our team. So we've got some great folks. We've brought on our design team. First with Leo Adieli on with us tonight is Irina Savakova. She's our lead designer and joining us. We also have our local architect team, Rust Orling, supporting us, as well as land design. And tonight we have on Gabriella Kanyamara, and she's our landscape design based here in Alexandria. We also are supported by Moya and IMEG in terms of public outreach, as well as of civil. And so we've got many other teams that are helping us to discover a lot of the history, a lot of the intricacies of this beautiful building, and we're on a journey together. And so you're the fundamental key that helps us, the glue that helps us to understand your experience with Market Square and with City Hall. And tonight we're going to focus on that greater outdoor civic experience at Market Square. And so your feedback is extraordinarily helpful to the design team. So a little housekeeping before we get into it. This is a webinar, so we're a little limited on some of the format, different than in person. So you'll see the panelists that are on screen, not all the attendees that are joining us tonight. So far, we have about 35 attendees joining us. I know that'll grow a little bit as the evening goes on and people are able to spare a few moments to join us. And so functionality, you will have an ability to use the question and answer feature on Zoom. There should be a little box with a question mark down below that you can use as we go through the presentation. If you have questions, we're going to reserve time at the end of this as we get through it to go through some of those questions. We're working to both record this and post it to our website in case you missed parts of it. You'll be able to review this recording later on, as well as if there's questions that we were not able to answer, we're going to put those in our question and answer on our website. So hopefully we're able to cover all the ground and questions that you have tonight, but if we don't, also look to the website. So possible IT challenges, just so you know, we're also going to have an interactive poll that poll will pop up as a separate screen over your presentation. So it depends on which format you're using to view us tonight. But that poll, when it pops up, it is movable. We're going to have images we're going to be asking questions about. And so where those images and features live on Market Square, we're going to have some pop-up polls. So just understand that that should be movable depending on what format you use tonight. Also, you're able to scroll through the poll in case the format is smaller that you're using. You should be able to scroll down. There should be no more than 3 questions or so. You'll be able to pull those, answer and submit those questions. When we go through that, we'll also post the results of those surveys once we close it for each series of questions so you can see it. And we'll walk through the answers to those in case anybody has technical questions or can't quite see the results. So we'll also verbally sort of walk through those results. Again, this is recorded in case you have any format or other technical issues that you can review later on. So appreciate you attending tonight. So this is a safe zone for your ideas. Your ideas are valuable. Many of you have experienced the market in City Hall in many different ways. Every voice is important. Over the last 2 months, we have talked to people who have lived in Alexandria for 3 months to those who have lived here for 30 years. And it's been neat to hear different perspectives of how people interact with the market and with City Hall. And we appreciate your time. Your time is precious, and you've chosen to help us and guide this process we're in discovery and trying to facilitate and figure out that new civic space of Market Square, because we have so much work to do. We know it's an opportunity, and we're going to go through some of those challenges with you tonight. So we are at meeting series number 2. This is the rough timeline of what we're in right now. We started with the design team hire in July. We've prepped and we started the engagement in September and through October to start to gather ideas. We've had a great amount of feedback. I don't know, 500-600 different forms of feedback through in-person, online, various forums to get us to this point here in meeting series 2. And this chart is about sort of where we're at in terms of both the engagement, sort of the top of the line, series 1, 2, and 3 are engagement that are leading us towards planning commission by next June. But we also are starting sort of a technical review process with our planning and zoning department because we are anticipating some use changes that require planning and zoning approvals. And so below the line, we're also showing submissions of different concepts and preliminary. As we get your feedback, we want to start to incorporate that and have conversations with planning and zoning for the regulatory process, with the ultimate goal right now of getting to City Council public hearing by July of 2025. So this is where we get into the fun stuff, series 1 feedback. And some of the different elements. Next slide. We've had a number of different series of engagements in September. Like as I said earlier, we had 4 in-person meetings all across the city, the West End, Delray, Old Town, and the new Minnie Howard campus, Alexandria High School, and 1 virtual. We've had farmers market pop-ups. So many of you might have seen us at different pop-ups across the city and in the Old Town Farmers Market. We've had really great engagement with our online intake form, as well as comments through our website. So we appreciate those who have engaged in that form, and as well through social media, and also employee open house, which is invaluable. Many of our employees come to work in City Hall and experience the market every day, Monday through Friday, or different days of the week. And so this has been a really informative time for our team, and it's really appreciated. So what we heard, and this is where I'm gonna turn it over to Gabby and our design team. Gabby and every one of our team members have been out in the community. In fact, Gabby was beat by our high school chess team at one of our farmers markets. That's right. She you learn something from everybody, including those young Alexandrians that are champions in chess. And we've got a great series of community feedback, and that's helping Gabby to start to put pen to paper and start to put out ideas tonight. So Gabby.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. And the enthusiasm that you reflect is the enthusiasm that the entire team brings to this process. And that's what we listen first, then we design. And that's what this is about. And we appreciate your time. And yes, I got beaten in chess at the North Old Town Farmers Market that Saturday, but I also made a friend. So I came away with the better outcomes. All right, so what we heard. So the last few weeks we've been hearing from you, like Jeremy described. And so we have some results to share with you. The poll number one, as we ask everyone and each one of you, if you have been seeing us around, and all the people that came to us and responded, was regarding about arrival and transportation. How does each one of us, how all of you arrive to Market Square? Unsurprisingly, the large amount, 57%, responded as by foot, which is a reflection of our very welcoming community. Second to the top was by car, which is, in my opinion, is also a reflection on how people are coming from maybe farther distances through the city to get to Market Square, followed by bus and other and scooter or bikes after that. The next question on arrival and transportation was about the place. Where do you usually arrive when you come to Market Square? And many will have to do with your route from home or from where you're coming, but there's several arrival points. And we want to understand, how many obstacles or sense of, what is the sense of arrival to each one of our guests and visitors. The highest really sense of arrival, or the point of arrival, is the corner of King Street and Royal. And that's really understandably so, because it comes, from the metro station, going eastward on King Street. Second to the top is North Royal, access closer to the building, which is the kind of the flush condition, the area where it doesn't have any steps. And surprisingly, King Street and North Fairfax, which is where the bus stop and the large, that's the tallest staircase is located, that is the third sort of highest point of access throughout our market. Very telling. Throughout the poll of arrival and transportation, we also had open commentary via our just comment cards or verbal comments. This word cloud is intended to show in bold or larger fonts some of the comments that came more repetitive, they were more repetitive throughout our conversations. As you can see here, the improvement of the garage, the accessibility through the Market Square, shade, and just in general, just walkways and traffic where it rose to the top. The next poll was about activities. And we asked all of you to respond, or the people that were able to talk to us, to respond, what kind of activities would you like to see in prioritize in Market Square, given the fact that it already holds a lot of activities? Unsurprisingly, to the left is the tallest number of votes, or the tallest column with the largest number of votes, which is the market itself, followed by seasonal events, music events, water feature, and gathering spaces at the very top 5. At the very bottom, the least priority, the priorities to the bottom, I guess I should say, it would be a playground, commemoration events, and active and passive learning.
I love it. Everybody loves the market, right?
I know.
And the longest very continuing farmers market. So we're going to keep on,
keep the tradition.
We love it.
Yes. The next poll number 3, was about the experiences. And this is more evocative. This was very subjective in a way, because it was more of a picture preference. So as pictures can speak to us in many, many different ways. However, we ask all of you to put your dots on the board, or have your preference given to us. And the photo that garnered the most interest was the one picture on the top left, with more than 10% of the opportunities to vote. And this, as you can see, is a very tranquil space with trees and gardens, and people just passively sitting, enjoying the moment in the shade of of nature. Alternatively, the least favor or voted for was people playing lawn games in an open space at the bottom right. Poll number 4 was a little different. We ask of you, of our audience, what features of current Market Square would you like to keep? What do you like so much that you would have a hard time changing? And vice versa, what should change? So the blue columns indicate the votes that came back with features to keep. And at the very top, we have farmers market, followed by trees and plants and benches and seating. The dark blue columns are features that people will prefer to change. And at the very top, it was a water feature, followed by improved accessibility and benches and seating. And everything, as you can see in between, is a mixed, just a mixed series of feedback on the different categories that we provide. With all of this information, what we began to do is, what is our discovery to design? And part of it is just establish some real realistic goals for the project. And the goals that we share with you tonight, there are 3, and they're relatively general and sort of umbrella goals, but we can begin to codify the design. The design goal number 1 was based on that feedback that you just saw and we shared, is improve the arrival experience and the accessibility throughout Market Square. And also, it's all done by eliminating barriers, making sure that there's visual access, that the access points are legible, and people feel overall welcome. What we've done is analyze now that the Market Square has been modeled in 3D. We have virtual models. We began to analyze all the physical barriers. The corner, known to all of us and to all of you, hopefully in the audience, the corner of Fairfax and King Street is the one that has the most great elevation change between the streetscape, the sidewalk, and the Market Square, with 5.5 to 7 foot walls, retaining walls to hold up all the vegetation and the trees, as well as 8 stairs to get from the bottom to the top. And this is the one closest to the bus stop, the current bus stop at that corner. It's fair to say that the distance to the closest accessible path, which means just a more of a flush condition or a ramp or something that allows people of all mobilities to access with ease, is 288 feet away. So people have to go and just go around to find the easy way to get in if you have a stroller or a wheelchair or you have some kind of a mobility challenge. The next spot of arrival is a little further north on Fairfax Street, closer to the building. Similarly, we have raised walls that hold up the soil that is needed for the trees that live there. And we have a combination of 5.5 to over 4 foot walls and a few lesser steps, a few less steps, but still the distance to the accessible way is 510 feet. So again, people have to circumvent the plaza to get to a better point of entry, a more comfortable point of entry.
It's a tremendous distance, Gabby. I really never pieced that together, but over 500 feet from accessibility is just incredible.
It's one of those things that annoys us all, but it's like you can't pinpoint it until you start really understanding the physical space. It's worth mentioning, and this is not in orange, but off to the left is one of those nooks where some people enjoy under the shade of the trees. There's some little seating areas. All of them, therefore, around the plaza on all 4 corners, all of them have steps to get to. And I have observed in the last few weeks that I've been there more often than in all my lifetime in Alexandria, which is 26 years. And only people that can go up those steps can enjoy fairly. And if you have a mother with a stroller, you have to get help to just get the stroller up to enjoy a little peace and quiet in the shade of the trees. So we're trying to eliminate all of that. The most popular entrance is at the corner of Royal Street and King Street, which is the most is the one that has most ease of access. Is the one of the flattest. The one both on Royal. However, because of the walls, it's just hard to see beyond. All this dog leg pattern with the indicated with the dash line. It's just kind of hard to get to. And you see the yellow steps. Those are the ones that leads you to that little quiet little seating area under the trees that people know so well, but it's hard to get to. Lastly, at the corner or closer to the building on Royal Street, this is the one that is just flush conditioned by the bike racks. It's pretty simple. It's very straightforward. A lot of people access through here, and there's just a couple of raised planters. It's not much to it. The design goal number 2, based on the feedback, is to provide more flexibility for the current program. Whether it's impromptu, day-to-day, used by people, with students coming in on bus loads from their schools, or whether it is programmed by city employees and by city-sanctioned events. And as you can see, there's all of these icons you've seen through the polls and through all the engagement we've had in the last few weeks. But we have a variety of activities that happen either casually or programmed throughout the year, throughout the week, and then throughout the year. And we're trying to accommodate as many as is physically possible.
It's an important challenge because I know we heard a lot of talking to different people about how do we engage the market square like through different seasons, right? Whether it's fall or winter, we have the tree lighting ceremony. We've lots of different things, but how do we engage it? We know it's very vibrant on Saturday mornings with the farmers market. And I know one of the challenges, Gabby, that you've heard is how do we connect the dots of creating spaces that have that vibrancy and feel throughout the year, which
You know, the
is
one, yes, yes, and thank you for that. You know, one of the challenges as an urban designer and all this team, you know, our team here, in general, in any public space, is to make sure people are safe and comfortable and invited, and also feels adequate. Sense of comfort feels by the, you know, having the surroundings be adequate to the scale of the activity. And the challenge with a space like this is it has to host, you know, host day-to-day, you know, casual, you know, if I want my brown bag lunch and I'm going to want to spend a few minutes outdoors and want to sit out there and enjoy my lunch with a friend, I can do so as a two-person group. And then the tree lighting ceremony in December when it's like, you know, 800, 1,000 people at any given time. And the space needs to be adaptable to be able to function adequately, you know, through the spectrum of the different, you know, densities of space or activities. Next, please. The design goal number 3 is to provide shade and functionality. And we kind of create this idea of the outdoor rooms, and this speaks to what I just described, that, you know, once we have a sense of scale and it feels comfortable, we can kind of linger and enjoy the space. Shade and functionality. This space is totally facing south. This is the south facade of the building. This plaza is exposed to the sun morning, noon, and afternoon. And so shade is paramount, and it would be a fantastic solution to have ways to provide so that people can enjoy the space throughout the day. And also have multiple functions. So it's not one single purpose. You know, this is going to have this project has a budget. And so we're trying to leverage all of the design elements so they can be multifunction for all of the activities that there are to happen here. All right. Concept 1. Oh, before concept 1, I want to reiterate, and I did that so last night. We would be remiss not to acknowledge the fact that there's another handful of consultants behind, and they're not present today, but they're through the Northeast of the country. But we have mechanical engineering, mechanical electrical engineering, sustainability consultant, structural engineering. And they're important because this slab where the plaza sits on, which is the roof of the garage, is being evaluated as we speak for all the reasons that Jeremy described. And so the structural integrity, the safety aspect of it, and then the interaction with the plaza, with Market Square, and how some of these elements, when we started like dreaming about this potential, we're still waiting for some of these analyses to take, you know, to be furthered. And so we are kind of designing in parallel. And so these concepts you're going to see today is more about, think about Legos on a table. We're trying to figure out how to move some of this program into the best location for the right reasons and have the right scale in terms of how these spaces relate to each other, and not be so tied to the details at the moment, because we need to still continue to discover and coordinate with our partners in our team, the other experts at their areas of expertise. So without further ado, concept 1, and we have 4 to share with you. We basically study the areas for hardscape that allows us for place for gathering, trees and gardens and vegetation, the possibility of a stage to continue with the tradition that already exists today, the water feature, which is at the top of things to change, and shade structures. They are man-made. They could be more permanent. So concept 1, like I said, think about a more of a Legos on a table and try to just move program around at this moment. The first move that we did with this concept, first acknowledge that the main entrance to City Hall will continue to be the center of the building. And the Leo A. Daily team are studying the facade in great detail to, you know, make sure that the splendor of the facade shines through all of this and the plaza doesn't get in the way. And so we're taking the stage away. Yes, Irena. Please.
Actually, it's not just the front appearance of the facade. The whole ground plate of the building needs to be engaged and be a continuum of the plaza, because that is one experience. It is
Yes.
how public is served, how people arrive, how they find their spaces in Market Square. So this is a continuum that is in process.
Thank you. And the door, you know, basically will be lined up to the center. And so the first move on this concept is to say, what if we continue to have a cover stage to continue to have all kinds of activities, buskers, musicians, ceremonies, and what have you. Excuse my voice, I'm getting better from a cold. But pull it away. Right now, it's too close to the main door, as you have, if many of you have been into City Hall many times. It's too close to the door, and it's just the entrance to the building is just not legible because of that. So pulling it away so it doesn't compete and still center. When that happens, then what do we do with the water feature? So in this concept, we're exploring in purple. You'll see two areas in purple flanking the stage. Perhaps the water feature takes a lesser area in square feet, and it could be a different type of fountain. It could be maybe a pop jet fountain, and it's just two small ones on both, smaller ones on both sides of the stage that can be managed at different times, different places. You know, when the market is working, that can be turned off, or just, you know, just play with the different times where they actually come into function for to be the amenity of the space. The rest of the area, you see there are areas in sand color. That's kind of the hardscape areas for gathering. And the green will be all these pockets of green canopy accompanied by gardens as well. Two elements that we've introduced here are the shade structures in turquoise. In this particular concept, they are perpendicular to the building, and they do flank that middle space as sort of kind of creating that outdoor room where people can gather. This three-dimensional aerial view can be probably hopefully a little more illustrative. So you can see, and this is not a presentation about design style, it's more about location and context and scale. So you see the shade structures, and we still need to study the architectural style of such structures. The whole idea is that they can accommodate some of the vendors of the market on a weekly basis, but also on a daily basis could be impromptu events of different kinds: music, outdoor classrooms, small gatherings. Just again, as I go back to my casual dining, you know, if I bring my brown bag lunch, there's a place to sit underneath. And then you see the groves of trees all around, which, if you can imagine, underneath, it could be all this series of gardens and places to sit and enjoy under the shades of trees, with the center stage being the stage itself. As you can see from the icons dispersed throughout and where they lead to, we incorporated all of the priority activities that have browsed through the polls and through all the community feedback. We're having fun with 3D sketches. So again, it's just a first few, just again, pen on paper to start to imagine. It by no means is stylistically accurate. It's more about thinking about the scale and the relationships of the different spaces that we create with these elements. So the stage will have a double side, and you can see people can interact with it. The many ways that people interact with it today. King Street, we are exploring a way to perhaps eliminate some of the tall planters. So there's more porosity through and more steps and more ways to get to. We cannot move the road, the street, King Street, cannot change elevation. So the change in elevation may still be challenging in some areas, but that's why we started introducing some more handicap accessible ramps. You see in the bottom right of the sketch, the beginnings of how we can accommodate a little bit of a ramp pathway to get from that corner to the Market Square. And of course, everything at the end of the day, once our structural engineer deems all these locations suitable and we can work together, these will be sculpted and just make it beautiful. Everything will be experiential, never utilitarian. And you can see some of the other aspects of that. Thank you, Sylvie. And this is another view just from the southwest corner. And you can see a little bit of that little pop jet fountain on the left. And if you can imagine the one on the opposite side flanking the stage, and then how some of these outdoor rooms people can gather and enjoy a moment around this place. And if you can imagine maybe people gathering on either side of the stage for different scales of events. Okay, we're a landing page for the first poll. So we would like to ask you now to provide the location of the features that we talked about. With A are indicated the shade structures in the turquoise color. B is the water feature in this concept. It's split in two, the purple areas. And C is the stage, which is center to the concept. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sorry. And Gabby, I think the shade structures, I think one of the things that we've heard is, I think through the market process, right, is the farmer's market having more permanent shade and stall-like feel, but also place that people, you said earlier, can have a brown bag lunch, a sandwich can be deployed to many other things throughout the year, and still provide, I think, what a lot of people experience on Saturday is we have a lot of tents. So how can we provide some of that structure where it has that sort of traditional market stall feel into the design? And if those are joining us like me, I like some components, and trying to figure out, like you said, like the Lego blocks. That's what the discussion is tonight, of where these elements would live. And maybe you don't like some of the elements, and that's okay too. Just throw a dislike if you like it. If you're neutral, we're trying to play that. And I think we have a series of other concepts also that will start to play with the locations.
Yes.
Right. So it's going to be a little dynamic tonight. And then at the end, we'll be able to rate sort of the different concepts to get a sense of where people prefer based on where things are moving. That's kind of the dynamic we're looking for, right? To help you.
And then this input, it will help us on par with what the investigation of some of these structural elements. And once we have the public's input and our team's end of the analysis, right, of this lab, and then we can begin to figure out where the capacities are and where the opportunities are for the Market Square, and then we'll get a little more refined concepts. But I think needless to say that all these features will be state of the art. The shade structures can have integrated infrastructure to support all kinds of activities, rather than be brought in. So
maybe one more parameter it's worth mentioning. There is one fairly static element, and that will be most likely the entry into the parking garage. Given the elevations of the street and where that is possible, we might be able to fluctuate just a little bit, but we were not going to move to a different street. So that's something to keep in mind.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay.
We want to go and open the poll. And so you're going to have a pop-up screen, and the pop-up screen should have 3 choices. And so you'll have a dislike, which is number 1, a neutral, don't necessarily have an opinion about it, and then 3 is a like. And so the first question is on the shade structure in terms of the location, and that's A. The B feature is the water feature in terms of splitting up sort of those features to the side. And then 3 is this stage sort of having pulled away from the building and then sort of still towards King Street, but in the center. And so we'll leave the poll open. Again, you should be able to move the poll itself. It's a pop-up on your screen. And once you click through, click the submit button, and we'll receive that on our side. And we'll give it just a minute as people get used to this format. I know sometimes online, figuring out the formats and how the interface works can take a minute. So we'll leave this open for just a minute, and we'll be taking a look in the background in terms of how many votes we're receiving in, and then be able to close that out once we're getting close to getting everyone's participation. Okay, it looks like we're getting close. Got about 75% of participants votes in so far. So well done. Yeah, everyone's getting their I voted sticker tonight. So thank you. All right, let's see. All right, we'll give it another, say, 10 or so seconds. Looks like we just about have everybody in. All right, why don't we go ahead and close the poll, and Gabby, let's walk through the results.
All right, so without boring everyone, I think looks like we have the highest number of votes were neutral on the shade structures here. Also, there was a lot of people neutral on the water feature. And if I scroll down, we begin to like the location of the stage in the center. There's the large number of votes that like. Interesting to see. Okay, well, nothing is perfect. We're exploring all these things, so it's good that everybody's sometimes you have that visceral reaction, and then you step back and look at it again. And then once you see all the constraints, things begin to take shape. So thank you for that.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it's dislike is the highest for
Dislike.
stage.
Oh, did I misspeak? I'm sorry. Thank you, Eli. Eli is our awesome civil engineer on the project. So thank you for correcting me. Okay, concept number 2. Same thing. We are thinking about this concept of having areas of hardscape for gathering, the trees in the gardens, some shade structures that could also function as market, for the function of the market, and water feature. This concept, we decided that perhaps doesn't have a permanent stage. And we can use some of these structures as impromptu stages, or the stage of the performance area can move around depending on scale, type of performance or event, and need. Through the middle, this concept is pretty strong in that the access and visual corridor from King Street to the main entrance of the building is lined up on the center. If you see in purple, the water feature is much occupies much less area than the current one. The current feature right now, just if you were curious, is 80 by 80 feet square. So all of the water features that we are studying are potentially smaller, and we're trying to calibrate the right size, for the right features. A lot of people come to Market Square and this is their picture moment. I've observed people all afternoons, mornings, weekends, and there's a fair stream of people that come from a courthouse after getting married, and they just take their photo right there on the steps or right in front of the fountain. It's a memorable it's a postcard moment by all counts. So we're trying to preserve some of these, moments as they're beloved by many, many people. So the
Gabby,
fountain, yes.
Yeah, and Gabby, you mentioned the term pop-up fountain earlier, and those can also be flush, right?
Yes.
And so they can actually be turned off and
yes.
be
So
flush, and so that can
the
be
picture,
programmed and more dynamic as well. Is that right?
correct. Didn't mean to interrupt you. The picture on the bottom right, on the president images on the right of this board, is a little bit indicative of what that could be. And 60 years ago, when this fountain was designed, 60 years have passed, and the technology of some of these water features has had technical advances. Water features can be programmed to have taller jets, smaller jets, no jets at all, could be completely turned off, and the hardscape surface can be repurposed for a different event. It can also have light as a part of that. So in the winter, when maybe it's better to have the water component off and winterized, perhaps light becomes a part of something magical can happen through the winter months, right? So we can explore things to expand how fabulous this centerpiece of element of this Market Square can be in the future. In this case, it's located in the center, and there's more of an open space or hardscape area that surrounds it for people to contemplate and interact with it, and also kind of a promenade around. You'll see that the shade structures in turquoise are more dispersed through the space. There's shorter, and instead of having 2 flanking, it's 4 dispersed around, with the idea being that maybe they're less obtrusive and more integrated into the landscape of the canopy of the trees and the gardens. And like Irena said before, the entrance to the garage doesn't change. There's just some technical aspects of that entrance that, from the transportation and access and clearance standpoint, it will be prohibitive to change. What we are going to try to change, though, is, as many of you have visited the parking garage, coming out of it, it's a little bit disconcerting, because it's hard, with the view angles and the view corridors to get outward to see where traffic is coming from. They're very narrow. So we're going to endeavor to improve that condition. It's worth mentioning. This one does not have a covered stage, even though it's in the legend. And so you'll see all the components here. And then the president image is a little bit of the spirit of what we're studying. Also, it's worth mentioning the photo on the upper right. You can see a little stadium style seating, a couple of steps. We think that the garage, if you've been there, it's open to sky. The ramp is open to sky completely. So there's a moment where the clearance of the vehicle is already passed, and maybe we can begin to create more usable space on top of it, that when people can actually gather, and maybe it's another place to flop and people watch or enjoy a moment and enjoy some gelato from across the street, or a pastry from the coffee shop down the street, what have you. The next one is a axonometric view from the southeast, similar to the other ones. So now you can see the scale of these shade structures and how they disperse through the plaza. It's a little more diffuse in terms of not occupying, center of the space. And then you see the softening of the groves of trees. Again, we ask you to please imagine how some of these gardens and some of these areas of seating would happen underneath, which will develop in due time once we have more information. Again, having fun, it's just sketching over some of these and imagining, just quick sketches to imagine how the water feature, the scale of it and the size of it and the interaction with it and how it just presents this foreground to the building and all of the elements that surround, which is this trees, shaded areas, or, just this more of a permanent shade structures. You see a little bit of that, what I was talking about in the sketch on the left side, right by the trees there, there's little 2 or 3 little steps where people can kind of sit up and gather and just spend some time waiting for friends. Or maybe there's, last night when we met over at City Hall, there was 2 or 3 tour buses with like preteens, like hundreds of them, maybe dozens, maybe not hundreds, but maybe they just came together and just, a place to gather before going back on the bus, or just have the beginning of a ghost tour or what have you.
Yeah, so that image is facing
Southeast.
the waterfront.
Yes.
Right?
So the corner, yeah, you see southeast. So to the left is like what we would do on top of the entrance to the garage. There's a little glimpse of a ramp right dead center of this page. You can kind of see it because it's behind the jets of the fountain. But that's where, when maybe possibly one of our handicap accessible ramps from the corner of Fairfax and King will lead into the main space. We want everybody with all mobility challenges to have the same arrival experience or as similar as possible as somebody that can arrive from every point. And part of it is just the wow factor, right? You arrive to the space and we have to be all proud. At the end of the day, it's like, this is our city, right? So this is a space that it should be iconic to the city. So we're endeavoring to keep that in mind and to bring that forward. Landing page for our poll. So again, we would ask you to please rate the location of these elements. In this case, there's no stage. We have the shade structures, and there are 4 of them labeled with the letter A. And then the water feature in the center labeled with the letter B in purple. The similar, it's the dislike with number 1, and the like is a number 3 with a neutral in the middle.
Great, Gabby. To this concept, I do see one question about curves. Is the idea that these are all basically at the same elevation? So the curve is more of the layout of concepts in this concept number 2, is that right? Not necessarily elevation change like in the center, because I think feature B, you see a little bit of the curve designs, and it's just an etch and maybe like a material representation, but not necessarily elevation change or stepping up or any.
Thank you for that question. I think the sketch is meant to be just a change in maybe paving to enhance, and sometimes these features have a peripheral trench drain so that all this recycled water come down and there's a way to recirculate. So it depends on the type of feature. It could be that, but quite frankly, we're still in the early exploration process. So it's possible that perhaps maybe the desire from our audience is that maybe there's no interaction with the fountain and we prefer to have something with a basin. So it just prevents people from going in. I mean, I think there's all kinds of, water features there are just so many kinds, right? And so we're not discounting a typology at this level. We're exploring. We feel like the interactive one that just gets turned off and allows this hardscape plaza to just be so flexible. That is the one that allows the most, well, I'm going to say something about bang for buck, but basically the investment that the city is going to make in the type of events that we can explore in spaces like this, when we provide the flexibility, it can be leveraged. And at the end of the day, we will see what kind of opportunities we have. So without further ado, we'd love to see your poll. So if we can launch the poll, it will work the same way as the previous with a pop-up.
And again, rating the location for the shade structure, which is A. There's 4 different A structures on this concept. 1 is dislike, 2 is neutral, 3 is the like. And so also for B, feature B is the water feature in the center, the reduced size, and the question is, response would be 1 is dislike, 2 neutral, and 3 is like on the rating scale. And we'll do the same in terms of watching the poll submissions as they come in, and give that just a moment to make sure that everyone is able to digest it with the image and then also the poll responses.
As the polls are being tallied and entered, I would use this pause to add a few more pieces of just information. Each concept we've endeavored to maximize, to keep the obviously the market activity alive, for as long as this record can be held, right, Jeremy? And at the same time, the concept is when we start laying out how the different elements of the design start landing on the space. We will be remiss if we don't try to make the actual market function more efficient for the vendors themselves, to have better facilities, better arrival, better
reliable power.
Reliable power, better access, better, just loading experience, all of that. And at the same time, we know that there's a waiting list. So trying to accommodate as many as it possibly. So I think this is our time to create a little more efficiency and then create, elements. Again, the water feature right now, it's taking some of the space, could be allocated to something else. And so with these concepts, we're exploring very roughly at this point, because these are rough concepts, if we can have an increase in the operation of the market and welcome more vendors into the mix. And so in all of them, we're seeing a little bit of a efficiency, and it could be in anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20%, generally speaking. And of course, we know that not all the vendors have the same space. Some of them are a little more, that not every space is exactly the same. So eventually we'll get to that level of refinement once we get more solidified plans. Are we good with the polls now?
Let's do a check-in real quick on seeing where we're at. Should be getting close. All right. You want to walk us through?
So we are, okay, so it seems like we are neck and neck, the neutral and the likes for the shade structure locations in this concept with 36% of you. It looks like the water feature, people like the location, 58%. Excellent. Very good. Moving on to concept number 3. Same type of elements, so that you're starting to now see the repetition of these, and this is how this is the basic elements and components of these concepts. That doesn't mean that we'll find and we'll create a canvas for other elements to start happening: lighting, furniture, art, references to history, other things. The flagpoles are necessary. I mean, we haven't even located the flagpoles just yet because we're still trying to figure out how the space is going to function. But we know from, City of Alexandria, we are not getting rid of our awesome, there's 3, obviously, the American flag, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the City of Alexandria flags. So I just want to emphasize that this concept is pretty preliminary, and there's many elements that happened along the way as we continue to explore. All right, concept 3. In this case, we explore the idea that perhaps the stage and the water feature are combined. There's perfect examples of that all over Boston and other major metropolitan cities in the US and abroad. And maybe that becomes this object in the middle of the plaza that is to be admired, but also be experienced. And so you see the 2 dots in the middle kind of intertwined. It's just to symbolize that maybe those 2 elements are together, designed. And then there is an aspect of art, an artful expression of those. We're going back to flanking that middle space with the shade structures on both sides in aqua or turquoise color. And then the green, it just shows all these other rooms again with just groves of trees with the gardens and places to sit. In the axonometric view from the southeast, you can see now the structures flanking the more sculptural stage. Again, this is no expression of design. This is just to give it a little flair to show that it's a little more articulated, but by no means it's a design. It's a real design. And as you can see, we're endeavored to accommodate all of the priority activities that the community has so far providing us with. This is the doodles. This is where us designers get to have fun. And there's many layers and sketches that they are, studied and then thrown around or posted on the board, and then we start all over again. So please don't react too much to the style of the stage and the elements of it. Is more to say that it will be an element of artful expression. And you can see how the water may interact with it and how this place is to be experienced from within out and from outside in. It's worth mentioning that on King Street, which is to your page lower right, we're still going to have some steps, but we've endeavored to introduce the sort of the accessible ramps flanking the steps. So again, to the point that I made earlier, the sense of arrival from King Street when you're dropped off on your bus tour, or you're just experiencing that layering, that moment, looking at the facade of the building, is equally, it has the same hierarchy and is equally important to all of us. I think we have another view a little closer. So this one, again, you can see a little bit of that market operation in the far right, and then just a little closer of the stage with the water feature. This particular sketch, we just started like trying to figure out if the interaction with the garage right now is a plant bed with a guardrail so that people don't fall down. Perhaps that becomes a mural wall or an activity wall, or some other vertical element that allows to interact and have more usable space.
It can be also technology driven, so we can project things. So it's a combination of art, creativity, a surface that has multifunctionality.
Correct. Thank you, Rena. Okay, we're going to our poll page now. So we will ask you a similar question. Rate the locations of the three main elements, which is the shade structures, once again in the turquoise color labeled A, the location of the water feature, in combination of the stage letters B and C, purple and orange in the center. Dislike is a 1, where there is a like it's 3. When the poll starts taking in place, I want to clarify the little A on the bottom left is just another, again, we're starting to find ways to not create so much symmetry, but opportunity. So if this is the busier sort of sense, portal of arrival, maybe there's like a smaller little structure that can house maybe some signage, or maybe some more markers, or another, maybe it's art or other type of structure.
Right. We'll check our polling, and we'll give it just another moment. Looks like we're about 80% votes in. And all right, let's go ahead and close the poll and check out the results.
Let's see. So feature A, so the shade structures for the location looks like not the vast majority, but it's a tick above the other one. It looks like the location, likes the location with the number 3. And the water feature in the center looks like 53% also like this location. Good. And then the last one, the stage, which are combined. So I guess also the highest score with 41% people like the location of the stage, in this case, combined with the water feature. Not to separate, they're kind of pretty evenly spread, the dislike, the like, and the like, but tick above, we're on the likes. It's good. Thank you. This is the last concept. And again, you have 3, and then you're going on a 4, and then you start going to layer in some, the best features, like Jeremy was saying. At some point, you just start liking a few elements, and this idea that is not one concept is going to survive all the way to the end. We think that through iterative process, seeking your feedback at each step of the way, and us exploring with our consultants and the city staff and our core team, we'll continue to massage, and maybe there's features of each one of them that will raise to the top as far as like top preferences, and as well as having the best chance to be incorporated for a whole host of reasons, structural, you name it. Okay, so concept 4. The big moves here is that we've gone back to a center fountain in purple, but maybe it's more slender in layout, so it's more linear, leading the eye towards the center of the building and the main door in the center of the space, and maybe not in one location, but perhaps two locations. So again, the programmable qualities of something like a object, which is the photo on your upper right, could happen. Sometimes you want a little bit of a fountain movement, but then the rest of the plaza is used for an event and you don't want to get sprayed, but there's that having that ability to have still water movement on some of these events is desirable. So that a fountain like this will provide some flexibility. The shade structures in the turquoise color and the aqua color, in this concept is exploring a little bit more of a pairing, and it depends. We have not really studied in depth like the span and whether it's cantilever or double column. It's too much detail to understand right now, given the constraints of the slab. But suffice to say that maybe if we pair them to have a little more functional space below, and so you see them paired in 3 locations. The southeast corner is the most challenging location from the accessibility standpoint. So there's really not a whole lot of space for this type of approach right there. The big move here is on King Street. You see that half a moon sandy color space. We are pushing a little bit of the limit of the concept here, but we are exploring perhaps at the center, the sidewalk on King Street get a little wider in a little bit of a crescent shape. And then the stairs can begin to kind of float from there to the center of the plaza, very much like the photo on the bottom left, where people that are being dropped off on a bus tour or some other group, they get away from the normal pedestrian flow east-west on King Street on the sidewalk, and people are not on top of each other, and there's space to queue, space to wait, space for the photo, space for the impromptu, history lesson or ghost tour or what have you, and all of these things. The 2 orange squares in this concept we're exploring that perhaps is not one stage. Maybe we just have a series of pergolas or other type of disposition of the space where can function for events of different scales. You see the sizes, something maybe more of a busker or somebody playing an instrument versus something a little more robust as a ceremony. And maybe they're just dual in scale and then dual on the space on either side of the sort of the main hardscape space in the center. And those are more like the photo on the bottom right, where you can see a dapple shade of a pergola or a shade structure. And maybe there's places that, there's different types of furnishings underneath for people to enjoy on a day-to-day basis. Next, please. Similar view from the southeast. You can see how these structures interact with each other and how these places can be playful. What this concept does is it puts kind of a little more structural edge to the plaza towards the backside and on Royal. So it can be pretty inviting, very urban. I mean, there's also, we need to study the movement of people during market day and allows that space in the center to be programmed. The sketch, again, having fun with it. Hopefully this describes a little bit better what I meant, describing the arrival from King Street and that little widening of the sidewalk to create a little mini lower plaza that kind of create that foyer for the upper plaza and still have the handicap accessible way. You see on page right, you see a little pathway between trees. There's 2 little human figures sketching in there, that it will be the accessible path, the ramp graciously sort of around this sort of crowned area, crescent area to arrive to the center of the space. And then you see some of that personality of the fountain that we're exploring here with the 2 structures on either side. This is a view still from the south looking to the building, maybe looking to the northwest with a smaller little stage area, little shade structure. It can be a little more, just whimsical in terms of the roof structure and the columns. Again, we're not at that stage yet, we're just imagining. And then the fountains themselves and how it can be pretty playful.
And as we're going through this, we know our goal is some sustainability. And so we know that we're looking at each shade structure for potentially solar. We have net zero goals and generation goals. And so we know we've got to figure out how to layer all these challenges as you're working through the position of them. We have our other design team and sustainability team looking at, after position, what else can we do, right, to maximize energy generation, sustainability goals, net zero goals across the project. So this team has got a ton of challenges. As you can imagine, as Gabby's playing through the Lego placement with us, our other engineering teams taking a look at what else can we do and leverage each of these structures with you. And so lots of different layers here.
We also know that by putting, our effort in the city to not only not decrease canopy, but increase tree canopy throughout, the city, the Market Square should be an example of that. We believe that could be a beacon of, if we it's like the walk, talk the talk, walk the walk kind of thing, right? And so if we can endeavor to balance all of these needs and then represent them in the best light, having all these opportunities. Also, trees gives us shade, which also reduce the heat island effects that is created by, all this open, this pavers, right, receiving sunlight all day long. So there's always a balance with all of those elements coming together. And our landing page for the poll. So similarly to the other concepts, we'll ask you to do the same thing, rate the shade structure locations, which are in the in a label as A. Please rate the water feature location, which is in purple with the letter B, and the stage or stages performance areas with the color orange and labeled with the letter C. 1 dislike, 2, 3 like.
All right, poll is open.
It's worth mentioning that this was a bit of a bold move on our part to push some of the limits of what we can do on the edge of King Street, but it could open a lot of possibilities too. We're intrigued by the concept. We're talking to our structural engineer to see what's the potential and is this really achievable. But we all know when we're walking in Old Town and all the tour, the tour groups come around, everybody's, just elbow to elbow. And we love it. We like it to be popular.
All right, looks like we've got about 80% poll results in, so we'll give it another, say, 30 or so seconds. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll.
On concept 4, let's see the shade structures.
Oh, wow.
Looks like the location of the shade structures is very acceptable to many of you, 64%. Looks like the water feature is acceptable to many of you, 61%. And it looks like the stage or stages are also acceptable to 48% of you that responded. Great. Thank you. All right, so now the concepts as a whole. We would ask you one more time. I think now that you're going to see them side by side, we're going to go through one by one, I guess. But they're all they're similar and they have similar components. And at the end of the day, those are pretty consistent. That's what makes a great public space, right? Man-made structures, nature, areas for congregation, areas for quiet contemplation, and all of the above. So this poll is more just rate the concept as a whole. Is it speaking to you? And again, pay a little less attention about the expression of how the design these elements are represented today. These are very preliminary, and it's more about just the feel of the scale. Does it look like there's enough trees? Does it look like things are falling into place? If it speaks to you and you like it, if you can just rate it, we're going to ask of you one by one. So we'll start on number 1.
And before we get into each one of these, there's an important question, which was in the chat, which was, will there be more or less available space for farmers market vendors? And so each of these concepts have more as you've gone through them. So we've done some initial placement in each capacity, and a lot of it's around because the existing fountain is so large, right, Gabby? That
yes,
by shrinking that water feature, we're opening up, and also each side of the farmers market has an elevated planter, which is not on the same grade right now, right? And so by changing those elevations, you open up a lot more opportunities for farmers market vendors. So is it right that each 4 of these concepts have more capacity than today?
At this stage, it's fair to say that at this stage of the study, which is preliminary, we've started to test with a general size of, just how the tents are lined up and how circulation of people will happen. And all of them have yielded, 10 to 15 to 20% more efficiency, which is pretty promising. you know, I don't want to get too exact and we can't share them today because there's still, some of these elements are still in, you know, being massaged. So, which is what I mislead, but is promising, I think, for the reasons you just explained. Thank you for that question. That's great. Or comment. Are we still voting? Are we voting?
No,
now?
we didn't.
Oh, okay.
I interrupted the voting. I'm
That's
sorry, guys. I want
okay.
to
No,
clarify.
no,
So
it's all good. It's all
okay.
good. Let's launch,
The
let's launch the poll.
the poll is now open. So again, 1 is dislike, 2 neutral, and 3 is like for this concept 1 in the overall layout.
And we're trying to go through this relatively quickly so that we can have a Q&A session at the end of this.
Yep. All right, looks like we're at 80% on this one. We'll give it another, say, 10, 15 seconds. So get your votes in. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll. See what we got.
Not very popular. Excellent. Love your feedback. Very good. It just makes our work more interesting. We got more work to do.
So 53%, in case those can't read it.
Yes, sorry, 50% dislike versus 7%
dislike on this one.
Yes, thank you for that. Sorry. All right, let's move on to concept 2 because we want to open up questions and answers at the end of this. Concept 2, let's launch the poll without much preamble.
All right, looks like we have just over 80%, looks like close to 90. And we'll go ahead and close this one out as well.
Okay, we're looking at this one a little bit better. So we have the same percentage of respondents, you know, is neutral or like 39% each. Neck and neck. Excellent. Thank you. Let's move on to the next. Concept 3 with a combination of the stage and water feature. If we can launch the poll, thank you.
All right, let's see where we're at. Got roughly 80%, 85, a couple more to get the votes in.
If you change your mind, you can always go online and tell us, you know, your point of view.
All right, let's go ahead and close this poll.
Okay, so this one not popular either. So 53% of you all that responded dislike this concept versus 20 neutral and 27 that and the like. Understood. Thank you. And concept 4. This concept 4 has the fountain in the middle lined up to the main entrance. You know, it's in a linear fashion with a couple of areas for performances or events, and it's got that grand staircase that makes the King Street's sort of sidewalk a little bit wider for like a lower plaza. Poll is launched.
All right, everyone's jumped in on this one fast. So we're up to 86%. So let's see if we get another 5 seconds or so to get the rest of the votes in. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll.
All right, 84% of your respondents, you know, like this one. Wow, interesting. 6% didn't like it. Fair enough.
Well, I think it's fascinating. This actually kind of mimics a little bit of what we found last night, Gabby.
Yes,
in
it does.
person, doesn't it?
It does.
Concept 2 and 4
I haven't had a
had
chance to
the-
count the dots on the
that
boards, but
had the
generally
highest
speaking,
strengths with
had
the
the,
four.
yes.
I think probably a lot of people like me, I like certain parts of different concepts and which one I lean towards. And it's
I'm
actually
gonna,
reflective of a lot of what we internally were thinking as well. It's
yes.
like, where's the push and pull, right?
I'm going to tell you a secret. I think we feel the same way. You know,
Yeah.
every project has its
Very close.
strengths.
Yeah.
And, you know, once we start, you know, understanding what the architecture, you know, how it's progressing, then some of these synergies, like Irena was talking about, will begin to present themselves. And some of these solutions will take a little bit more solidified shape. Anyway, I think it's enough of us. Should we open the Q&A session?
That'd be great. And we have our Assistant Director of Capital Projects, Janine Kintab. I didn't introduce you earlier, but Janine is on. She's going to help us to moderate our Q&A process. She's been keeping an eye on our questions tonight. So Janine, I'm going to hand it over to you to help us out.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. So the question and answer kind of chat has been really busy. There's a lot of questions related to the farmers market, both the future design as well as the temporary operations. So there's a question here about the construction period and what are some of the renovation timelines and the plans around the construction phase and the impact to parking and traffic flow, and what are the plans to accommodate the vendors during construction?
Great. Thank you, Janine. I'll jump in for that one. So first, we are right now, we have a set up a vendors work group to start to go through and go through the logistics. We want the market to continue to thrive. We know it's going to be a disruption. We know how we have a tremendous amount of work to do. Right now, we're looking at options of North World Street right next door, as well as Tavern Square. And we're in discussions with the market vendors right now about how to make sure it's active and what works and what doesn't work. So we have an active work group. We met last week with the group. We have another meeting we're working to schedule. This is going to be interactive. We have roughly over a year of design still to do. And we're planning to be in construction roughly the winter of 26 into 27 and 28, the duration of which we don't know yet. So we're hiring right now a construction manager that's going to help us to look at the duration of how much and how long different portions of the project need to be under construction and how quickly we can get them back online. Obviously, we want to get the garage functioning and back online. It's an important asset to Old Town for parking, and the market above is such an important aspect. So we're going to be working through with our entire design team, our structural team, and then as we bring our construction manager on to answer those questions. It's very early to answer some of these questions. We don't know all the design, but we know the market is a critical function. We know there's so many different stories. We spend so much time out, so many different stories and different personal relationships that people come to the market every weekend and catch up with neighbors and vendors. We want to make sure that that continues to thrive. So stay tuned. We don't have all the answers yet, but we've got a vendor work group of over 20 folks that are vendors that have agreed to sign up and help us out and discover solutions together. So stay tuned. It's a great question.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. So we've got a question about the design concepts, and generally speaking, with regards to the farmers market component, as well as the urban kind of planning, what comes first, kind of chicken or the egg? Are you designing and laying out the market and then doing the design of the spaces, or the other way around?
A great question. It came up yesterday too. And I think the design process, and Irena probably makes a better explanation than I can, but it's iterative. So we start with the idea based on the priorities that we've been given by the public and the city of Alexandria. We start with the ideas and we diagram them. And then we do the overlay of a potential market layout. And again, we're not experts. We're looking for those that actually do have activity in the market to give us some guidance, right? So that's where the work group stands for, and of course, all your feedback. So we'll take all that feedback, continue to do some layouts. We've heard so far that perhaps, you know, when the market is thriving these days, there's very limited space for just pedestrians to have a place for respite. I mean, there's just not places in between, you know, just vendors to just pause and regroup, right? So some of that is just limited space and how it functions, how people flow. We also heard about, you know, just loading and unloading and the logistics of getting set up. We also heard about infrastructure and people bringing in compressors and all kinds of other things that they need to succeed. And so we're taking all those, that feedback and just kind of put them in through the thought process. So the chicken and egg, I think it's chicken and egg several times. And so what we've done so far, these diagrams have been, sketched, we're sketching a little more in detail, be getting a little more granular. Then we do an overlay to see if it starts to look like it starts solving all of these concerns. And I'm sure we're going to learn more concerns, but I think it's iterative. And that thing at the end of the day is iterative, and we'll continue to test. And there will be more opportunities for people to provide feedback once we have more solidified designs.
And there's some fascinating, I know all of our team, as we're observing and watching, we watched strollers, we watched food lines back up, we watched almost every different interaction in dynamic. I know that's, Gabby, that's going to come into play as we start to refine each of these and to figure out like that flow, that feel,
Yes.
that pattern. When you've got, kids with you, you've got a stroller, you've got carrying things, like all those different levels of interaction. They're just fascinating to figure out how they all play into this design.
And, we should allow more people to ask questions, but there's magic in density too. People like the energy, if it's too dispersed, then energy dissipates, just like in anything, right? So there's a sweet spot where things should work as they should. And at the same time, we like going to the market because everybody's there. And so there's an energy that comes with that. And so anyway, I can speak for hours about this, but let's answer a few more questions.
It's a perfect transition because there's someone who's curious about, you've shown the permanent stalls. Can you explain how they're all connected with circulation? I think there's maybe a confusion that it's only permanent stalls and that they're going to create some disjointed experience during the market. So please explain how does circulation operate during market, off market, and then additionally, the additional tents that perhaps.
Great question. And the reason we haven't showed the tent layout that we're testing is because they're still being tested and we don't want to mislead the public. We want to make sure that they work before we start, because we don't know all the science. Again, we're the experts in urban design, but we seek all your input. So to answer the question, the shade structures that are going to be permanent are going to accommodate a few, and maybe a few is not the right representation, some quantity of vendors, depending on what's layout and how many square feet and how much length of it we have to work with at the end of the day with the preferred concept, number one. Number two, it's intended to have a combination of tents that come and set up on the hardscape space. So it's a combination of open air. We heard from some of the vendors don't need a tent on a regular basis unless it's raining or scorching sun. And some do. And then, those that, could be under the permanent structure. So it's meant to have a combination. We also have, imagine some of these areas where you have the canopy trees, maybe they're not on plant beds. Maybe they are underneath some, metal grates or some other way so that people can use the space. Very much in Europe, you see all the spaces being used underneath the canopy of trees to set up tents as well. So we are beginning to understand spacing of all these elements so that we don't trample against each other in terms of all the elements. And then lastly, on market day, the space is full, the tents are laid, and some vendors are under the structures and some of them are in the tents. And on the day-to-day, like let's say on any given weekday, I mentioned this a couple of times before, there could be furnishings in there that could be brought back just like the tables that are out there, or a better combination of things where people can come and, like I said, come back and play a game of chess, like the one I had with my new friends over at Alexandria City High School, or bring a lunch or people, staff that works in City Hall. They're gonna have a fabulous plaza. Bring and just have a lunch meeting, or just sit outside and get some sun and just enjoy the open space. So those are intended to have functionality that is more impromptu for the day-to-day for everyone to use. And again, if there's a Thursday evening event of some sort, or again, I saw all these teenagers that were unloading of a bus yesterday, if there's a impromptu outdoor class or something, they can gather under the shade and then just have some time to pause. So I think at the end of the day, state of the art, we're looking for state of the art on these structures so that they're plug and play as much as we can provide, at the same time that it provide the flexibility for the market and for other functions to take place.
Wonderful.
It's community nexus. It's community building type of center of activity that is multi-layered, multifunctional, and super exciting of how it will evolve.
Thanks, Irina. So we've got 6 minutes left. I'm going to try and cram in. We're going to do speed round and see how many questions we can fit in. So there's a question here about the street and sidewalk changes, and in particular, looking at transit. And are we going to see perhaps more separation between the tour buses loading in and loading and the bus stops? So please share some feedback there.
So I can answer the streetscape design, and then I'll pass it on to Jeremy to talk about the bus, because that's another different story. That is a study that the city is taking. In a quick answer, the streetscapes are being a part of this project, and they're going to be improved. Our civil engineer, Eli Goldman, here in the call, they're doing our due diligence, understanding utilities as they exist and other constraints throughout, underneath the sidewalk, so that we can begin to figure out how can improve, the longevity of the street trees and all the tree pits that you see, like they're over compacted and all of that. So there will be improvements to the streetscape throughout via design with, paving, trees, curbs, etc. Now Jeremy can elaborate on the transit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And through this study, we've sort of heard feedback about some of the conflicts related to the trolley and dash buses at the corner of Fairfax and King. And that's something we're working with Dash and our transit partners to look at, especially if you're coming up from the garage. It can be a little bit difficult. We already have very narrow sight lines coming out of the garage. And so that's something we're studying. And we also have feedback as well of making sort of that transit stop more improved, that people arrive to a place and wait in a place that's appropriate for bus and transit options there. So that's still under study. We don't have all the answers yet, but we've certainly received that feedback, and we're working with our team members in transportation and environmental services.
Okay, great. There's a question here about the water feature, and is it possible for it to be interactive, kind of like the one at Chicago's Millennial Park?
We did show some photos that actually allude to that. There's other ones throughout the country. They're fabulous. Dilworth Plaza in Philadelphia is a good one. Check it out. And so interactive, we're exploring. I said before, if an interactive fountain gives us flexibility that the zone where it exists, when the fountain is off, the area can be repurposed for a different event. So it does expand the possibility of events through the area. So we're definitely exploring that typology.
Okay, great. So a lot of these questions are also related, to the farmers market. We've got a lot of our vendors here, which we're really excited for your participation, and thank you so much for joining. There is a question about parking during the construction phase. Jeremy, do you have any answers you could share with folks about what'll be available?
Yeah, so parking during construction phase, obviously we're going to be losing Market Square, a garage. And so we do have parking available at our courthouse and at Tavern Square. As a part of the farmers market vendor group, we're exploring, and one of the questions is, what do we do on Saturdays during the market? Because Tavern Square is privately owned, and so they charge a fee. And so that's something, and a question that has been asked from our vendor group is, can it be free? And so that's on our list to explore. We don't have that answer yet. We just met last week. And so we're starting through the process of asking and working through the logistics of those questions. And if there's expenses around it, how do we navigate all those? So that's a good question. It came up in our vendor work group, and is still working through that solution. So stay tuned.
Great. We've got another question here about the elevator to the garage. Are we going to be retaining that feature?
Yes, that's the short answer. We are still studying, because of it's part of the structure that Jeremy described of the old concrete. We're trying to figure out whether it stays in place with a better resolution for access down below at the parking level as well as plaza level. So an improved arrival, and just quite frankly, people don't even know it's there. So we're looking into that, or possibly even studying a relocation of it if the conditions are prime for that to happen. And that's not depend only on the urban design, is the structural design, and there's utilities and plumbing and other things that have mechanical for the elevator that have to be considered.
And code compliance and the stair that is tied to it. So it's a vertical circulation that needs to be applicable to current codes and needs to withstand the test of time. So there are a lot of aspects.
Okay, great. So we are right up at time, and there are still a lot of questions that we didn't get through today. So like Jeremy said earlier, we're going to be going through all these questions. You'll see our FAQ section up on the website getting updated. Here's a link to our website. And then I'm going to pass it to Jeremy to close us out for the evening.
Thank you, Janine. Appreciate you helping to facilitate our Q&A. So this is an iterative process. And so a couple of things, check out the website. There is a provide your input online on the website. And so that's where you can provide a comment. So if you're like me, I'll go home tonight and I'll think of something I meant to say or comment about, right? There's always that little extra thing, or maybe a park or a place that you visited or an example that you want to use. That's always very helpful. So please use those formats, input that online. We get those, we share those with the entire team, which is really helpful to us. So upcoming activities, this is a series 2. We're going to be starting to compile this feedback, and this has given us a lot of homework to take a look at, which has been great feedback and data. And so we've got about 30 days. We plan to come back to you right now in early December. So we've got a lot of work to do to pencil out, to figure out the puzzle pieces and Legos that Gabby talked about, and sort of do the refinement and iteration, and get sort of into more layers and work through some of the structural questions. So please engage through that. We appreciate your time. We're going to be meeting with the Farmers Market Vendor Work Group. I think we've worked on scheduling a meeting here, and we have a poll out. So hopefully in the next week or so to meet with vendors, and there's lots of logistics. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying to prepare. We're roughly a year out, and we're trying to have a very much lead up time open about the different challenges involved. And so we appreciate your time and appreciate you being on this journey with us. And it's really an exciting project. This has been on the books for almost 10 plus years, even 20 years if you go way back, in terms of trying to invest in City Hall and now in Market Square. And so it really is an exciting time for all of us. And I know the project team appreciates your time tonight.
Yes, we do.
So thank you all so much. And please sign up and stay engaged. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.